Oh, I hope that it's given a few more honest adults in the lives of the children who watch.
For years, all kinds of rumors have spread about Fred Rogers, mainly because people find it hard to believe that a man could really be that nice and wholesome. But the man you saw on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was the exact same man you would have met if you introduced yourself on the street. In fact, the kindly TV host was bad at interviews, but only because he wanted to be friends with everyone who asked him questions. From the ways in which his show was seriously groundbreaking to his testimonies before both the Senate and Supreme Court, let's take a look at the amazing truth about Mr. Rogers, as now his son confirms the rumors. Before diving into the rumors, let's take a moment to explore how the incredible Mr. Rogers became the beloved figure we all cherish. Fred McFeely Rogers was born on March 20th, 1928, in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, at 705 Main Street. He was the son of James Hillis Rogers, president of the McFeely Brick Company, and Nancy McFeely Rogers, a dedicated volunteer who knitted sweaters for American soldiers and served at Latrobe Hospital. Nancy had always aspired to be a doctor, and her passion for helping others left a lasting impression on young Fred. Although born at 705 Main Street, Fred grew up a few blocks away at 737 Weldon Street in a charming three-story brick house. When Fred was 11, his family adopted a young girl named Elaine, who became his sister. Fred had a love for playing the piano and spent countless hours with puppets, developing a talent that would later become a hallmark of his television show. Interestingly, in the 2019 film A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Tom Hanks portrays Fred Rogers. This casting was more than just a coincidence. Tom Hanks and Fred Rogers are actually sixth cousins, related through their ancestor Johann Mefford, who emigrated from Germany to the United States. Fred's childhood was not without challenges. He was often bullied because of his weight and was nicknamed Fat Freddy. His introverted and shy nature, combined with frequent asthma attacks, made him a homebound child. Despite these difficulties, Fred found solace in his imagination. Morgan Neville, the director of the 2018 documentary Won't You Be My Neighbor, described Fred's childhood. He made friends with himself as much as he could. He had a ventriloquist dummy, stuffed animals, and he would create his own worlds in his childhood bedroom. Fred Rogers left an Ivy League school to major in music. Fred Rogers was deeply affected by classmates who teased him in grade school, but he battled it in the most positive way possible, by using his imagination and playing the family piano. When he wanted his very own piano at the age of 10, his grandmother purchased a $3,000 Steinway grand for him. Rogers kept it for the rest of his life, and when he got to high school, he found the confidence he was looking for and was even elected student council president during his senior year. Upon graduation, he enrolled at Dartmouth College, an Ivy League school in New Hampshire. However, Rogers wanted a better music program than Dartmouth could offer. Accordingly, he transferred to Rollins College in Florida and majored in music composition and theory. He also met his future wife, Joanne Bird, who remembered how Rogers sat right down and started playing some pop stuff. And we were so impressed, because none of us could do that. After graduating in 1951, Rogers used his musical talent to get a job in television. But he never forgot Joanne, proposing to her in a letter after leaving Florida. Rogers' move into television was unexpected, as his initial interest was in music composition. However, he saw the potential of television as a powerful tool for education and children's development. This realization led him to work behind the scenes on various children's shows before creating his own program. His unique approach, combining music, puppetry, and gentle conversations, set a new standard for children's television. During the entire run of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Rogers composed all the songs for the show. He wrote over 200 songs, said his nephew, Daniel Crozier. Mr. Rogers was a minister, not a sniper or Navy SEAL. Fame almost always brings with it rumors, and Fred Rogers was no exception. One of the most persistent and false rumors was that he had served as a rebellious sniper in the Vietnam War, covered in tattoos and frequently flipping off television cameras. Thankfully, none of this is true. While Rogers dutifully registered for the draft in 1948, he was never called to serve due to an undisclosed health issue. Another myth claimed he was a Navy SEAL. However, the SEALs were established in 1962, by which time Rogers was already in Canada filming his early television show. The naughtiest thing Fred Rogers ever did, if it can even be called that, was take his morning swim in the nude to maintain his weight of 143 pounds, a number he cherished because it correlated to I, 1 letter, love, 4 letters, you, 3 letters. Rogers did indeed study ministry at the Pittsburgh Theological Seminary while working at WQED, a public television station, and making weekly trips to New York for a live show. After graduating, he was ordained as a Presbyterian minister. Instead of a traditional ministry, Rogers felt his calling was to serve children through television. When the Pittsburgh Presbytery declined to offer financial support for his project, Rogers persevered and raised the necessary funding on his own. The beginnings of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Fred Rogers' longtime friend, John Sinclair, once recalled a party where Fred and Joanne Rogers were guests. At one point, Fred disappeared, prompting Joanne to tell Sinclair, "Find your children. He's probably there." Sure enough, Rogers was off playing with the Sinclair children, making goofy faces and having a great time. "I've always loved children more than adults," he later explained to Sinclair. Fred Rogers was disheartened by the shallow, demeaning shows for kids that he saw on television. He wanted to create something better. In Maxwell King's book, The Good Neighbor, The Life and Work of Fred Rogers, it is suggested that Rogers' own tumultuous childhood inspired him to start a show dedicated to children. Following advice from fellow children's show host Gabby Hayes, Rogers spoke as though he was addressing just one child, creating an intimate and personal connection. Rather than lecturing, Rogers encouraged his young viewers to listen to their favorite grown-ups, validating the life lessons they needed. In 1969, Rogers delivered a heartfelt speech before the Senate Subcommittee on Communications about the importance of quality children's television. His testimony was so moving that it contributed to a significant increase in federal funding for the public broadcasting system, PBS. Mr. Rogers' show first aired in Canada. By the late 1950s, Fred Rogers was working as a puppeteer on The Children's Corner in Pittsburgh, according to the Christian Science Monitor. His work caught the attention of Fred Rainsbury of the Canadian Broadcasting System, who invited Rogers to host a show in Canada called Mr. Rogers. This opportunity allowed Rogers to step in front of the camera, a significant change from his behind-the-scenes role. In 1963, Rogers moved his wife and 2 children to Toronto to begin this new chapter. The Neighborhood Archive notes that Rogers spent his first year in Canada meticulously planning the show. All the now familiar elements were there: his iconic cardigan, the music, the puppets, and the signature trolley rolling through the neighborhood of make-believe. Mr. Rogers served as an early Canadian prototype for what would eventually become Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. In 1966, Fred and his family decided to return to America, where they expanded Mr. Rogers into a half-hour show. PBS picked up the show in 1970, and it quickly became a beloved staple of children's television. The title of A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is wrong. The film A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood initially entered production under the name You Are My Friend. However, the title was changed to more clearly evoke its subject, Fred Rogers, and his iconic show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. The new title is drawn from the opening line of the well-known theme song of the show. However, there's a common misconception about this line that many people fall victim to. This mix-up is an example of the Mandela effect, a psychological phenomenon where large groups of people remember something incorrectly. It gets its name from a widespread but false memory that Nelson Mandela died in prison, even though he was released in 1990, later becoming the president of South Africa, and passing away in 2013. Similarly, many people remember the theme song of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, starting with, "It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood." In reality, Fred Rogers sang, "It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood." The film's title uses the incorrect but commonly remembered version, "A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood," because it aligns with what most people think they remember. Sorry if this just completely blew your mind. The truth about that cardigan and those sneakers. You know the drill. In every episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Fred Rogers would walk through the door singing, "It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood," while changing from his jacket to one of his iconic colorful sweaters and switching his street shoes for comfortable tennis shoes. But why did he do this ritual every single episode? According to Christine Jackson from Rewire, the show typically aired in the late afternoon when parents were getting off work. Rogers wanted to evoke the sense of transitioning to casual time at the end of the day, offering a familiar and comforting routine. The sweaters he wore held a special significance. In a 1999 interview with the Television Academy Foundation, Rogers explained that his mother knitted each one, making one every month. Blogger Nick Ricardo noted that Rogers initially wore sweaters with buttons, but he switched to zippers because they were quicker to put on. One of these iconic sweaters is now displayed in the Smithsonian Institution. Rogers also paid careful attention to his choice of shoes. He favored navy blue Sperry topsiders and Converse sneakers, which contributed to the relaxed atmosphere he wanted to create. Additionally, according to Parade, his dress shoes made too much noise on the set's floors, so he opted for sneakers to move around more quietly and smoothly. This attention to detail helped establish the warm, welcoming environment that became synonymous with Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Mr. Rogers considered his viewers his friends. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was much more than just a children's show. It was a profound influence on many lives. While earning his ministerial degree, Fred Rogers also studied child development, which deeply informed his approach to his television work. He was adamant about not allowing commercials that marketed to children during his show, always putting his young viewers' well-being first. Rogers once said, "Anyone who does anything to help a child in his life is a hero to me." The impact of Rogers' philosophy extended beyond the children who watched his show. Tom Junod, whose 1998 Esquire article about Rogers inspired the 2019 film A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, praised Rogers for his unique ability to speak to children with respect and to adults with simplicity. This dual approach allowed him to connect deeply with audiences of all ages. Rogers' influence continued through his colleagues and fans. When staffer Hedda Sharapan wrote a manual for physicians on how to talk with children, Rogers reminded her, "You were a child once too." This reminder underscored his belief that adults should always remember their own childhood experiences to better relate to and understand children. Another admirer, Deborah Farmer Chris, noted that Rogers consistently reminded adults of the importance of teaching children that feelings like sadness are temporary and will pass. Fred Rogers' dedication to nurturing and understanding children, combined with his steadfast principles, ensured that Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was a show that transcended generations, leaving a lasting legacy of kindness and empathy. Mr. Rogers explained concerns to children with understanding and dignity. Fred Rogers made it a point to address difficult and sometimes frightening topics on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, tackling issues such as death, divorce, war, and racial tensions. One memorable instance was when he found a dead goldfish in the aquarium on the set. Instead of hiding it, Rogers used the opportunity to discuss death, helping to alleviate children's fears. He often reinforced his teachings through songs and provided practical strategies for parents to support their children's growth and understanding. Rogers believed in giving children everything that we possibly can to help them grow in healthy ways. Sometimes his dedication went beyond the show. A remarkable example involves young Beth Usher, who experienced up to 100 seizures daily due to a brain condition. Watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood miraculously eased her symptoms. Facing brain surgery, Beth's mother reached out to the studio for a signed photo. Rogers went a step further and called Beth that night, speaking to her in his puppet voice. He also sent her a box of memorabilia to take to the hospital. When Beth fell into a coma after her surgery, Rogers visited her in the hospital, leaving his puppets by her side. She woke up shortly after his visit, and their friendship endured throughout her life. Mr. Rogers personally answered all of his fan mail. What does a celebrity do when he receives thousands of pieces of fan mail each month? If he's Mr. Rogers, he responds to every single one. Fred Rogers never discarded a letter. Instead, he took the time to personally write back, crafting responses that were deeply personal and heartfelt. His assistant, Heather Arnett, meticulously cataloged each piece of mail, many of which conveyed real-life issues and concerns from his viewers. Some of the letters Rogers received went beyond typical childhood worries. For instance, 6-year-old Amy Melder, a young Christian, wrote to Mr. Rogers to ensure he knew he was going to heaven. Rogers responded with a thoughtful letter, thanking Amy for her scripture and sharing that Jesus is important to me too. In 1996, some of these cherished correspondences were published in the book Dear Mr. Rogers, Does It Ever Rain in Your Neighborhood?, showcasing the profound impact he had on his audience. Fred Rogers Productions continues to honor his legacy by accepting and cherishing fan mail today. Fred Rogers received an amazing amount of awards. Children weren't the only ones captivated by Mr. Rogers and his neighborhood. Starting in 1969 with a Peabody Award, Fred Rogers went on to garner an impressive 66 award nominations throughout his career. His accolades included the first of 4 Daytime Emmy Awards in 1980, alongside the prestigious Sign Golden Eagle Awards in 1986 and 1987. A decade later, he received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, delivering a memorable acceptance speech where he humbly asked everyone to take 10 seconds to remember those who had supported them. His honors continued to accumulate. Fred Rogers was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame in 1999 and became the inaugural recipient of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Fred Rogers Award in 2001. Among his most cherished accolades was the Presidential Medal of Freedom, personally bestowed upon him by President George W. Bush in 2002 for his significant contributions to children's education. Additionally, he received 40 honorary degrees throughout his lifetime. Following his passing in 2003, the U.S. House of Representatives unanimously passed Resolution 111, honoring Rogers for his tireless advocacy on behalf of children worldwide, his unwavering commitment to demonstrating compassion, and his dedication to promoting kindness through his exemplary life's work. One of Mr. Rogers' biggest fans was Coco the gorilla. Remember Coco, the extraordinary gorilla who captivated the world with her ability to communicate using sign language starting in 1971? Before her passing in 2018, Coco had the pleasure of meeting various celebrities, including Leonardo DiCaprio, William Shatner, Robin Williams, and, notably, Mr. Rogers. Their encounter in 1998 was particularly touching, as the 127-kilo, nearly 280 pounds, ape embraced Rogers warmly with her large arms. While only snippets of their time together are available online, Coco was an avid fan of Rogers' show. Upon his arrival, she not only recognized him but also hugged him affectionately, inspected his cufflinks with interest, and expressed her love for him. Coco even unzipped Rogers' cardigan and cherished the gift he brought for her, a stuffed Daniel tiger, a beloved character from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Rogers fondly recalled the most memorable part of their visit, saying, "She took my shoes off, during his 1999 interview with Tom Junod. Celebrity guests and future stars appeared on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Fred Rogers had some surprising tastes, including a fondness for zombie movies like Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead, which he found a lot of fun. These films were directed by George Romero, whom Rogers had actually employed on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Another amusing incident involved actor Michael Keaton, who was initially a stagehand on the show. Keaton once played a prank on Rogers by placing a blow-up doll in his closet. Rogers, ever unflappable, responded by dancing across the set with the doll before returning it to its original place. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood also welcomed a diverse array of celebrity guests over the years. According to Parade, chef Julia Child appeared on the show in 1974, followed by singer Tony Bennett in 1975 and renowned cellist Yo-Yo Ma in 1990. One particularly memorable guest was actress Margaret Hamilton, famous for her role as the Wicked Witch of the West in the classic film The Wizard of Oz, 1939. Hamilton joined Rogers to reassure children that witches could be nice too, and that her character in the movie was just that, a character, not someone to be feared. A crew member died during production of A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Fred Rogers, known for his advocacy of kindness and compassion in a sometimes harsh world, famously urged people to look for the heroes during times of adversity. However, the production of the movie about his life, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, was marred by a tragic incident that underscored life's unexpected sorrow. During filming in October 2018 in Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania, James M. Zwiller, an Emmy-winning sound mixer known for his work on projects like the HBO movie Bessie, took a cigarette break on a balcony outside an apartment building. Witnesses reported a sudden crash, and M. Zwiller was found after a fall from a second-story balcony. He was quickly transported to UPMC Mercy Hospital in serious condition, but his condition deteriorated rapidly in the following hours. Despite efforts to save him, M. Zwiller passed away as a result of the fall at the age of 61. The tragic incident shocked those involved in the production and the community alike. Sony, the studio producing the film, expressed deep sorrow and launched an investigation into the circumstances surrounding the accident. Tom Hanks didn't care for Mr. Rogers at first. It might surprise many to learn that Tom Hanks, the acclaimed actor portraying Fred Rogers in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, wasn't always a devoted fan of Mr. Rogers' gentle PBS series, which captivated audiences for over 3 decades. In fact, during his childhood, Hanks gravitated more towards shows like Rocky and Bullwinkle and other lighter fare. However, Hanks's perspective on Fred Rogers shifted dramatically a few years ago before he took on the role of playing the iconic TV host. A friend sent him a clip from a 1981 episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood featuring Fred Rogers interacting with Jeffrey Erlanger, a young boy in a wheelchair. In the clip, Rogers engages with Jeffrey in his characteristically gentle and attentive manner, discussing deep emotions and singing "It's You I Like" together. Reflecting on the impact of the clip, Hanks recalled being deeply moved to tears. He praised Fred Rogers for his remarkable ability to connect with someone who might typically be overlooked or misunderstood. Fred is just so wonderfully gentle and present with someone who normally would make most people feel uncomfortable, Hanks explained. The poignant interaction, where Rogers asks Jeffrey about his feelings and receives a heartfelt response, left a profound impression on Hanks. In fact, Hanks cited this emotional experience as one of the pivotal reasons he chose to take on the role in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Fred Rogers' personal life. Fred Rogers met Sarah Joanne Bird, known as Joanne, while they were both students at Rollins College. They married in 1952 and remained together until his passing in 2003. The couple had 2 sons, James and John. Joanne Rogers, described as an accomplished pianist, earned her Bachelor of Music from Rollins College, followed by a Master of Music from Florida State University. From 1976 to 2008, she performed publicly with her college classmate, Jeanine Morrison. According to biographer Maxwell King, Rogers was known among his close associates as being absolutely faithful to his marriage vows. Additionally, Rogers was red-green colorblind. He adopted a pescatarian diet in 1970 after his father's death and transitioned to vegetarianism in the early 1980s, citing ethical reasons and stating, "I couldn't eat anything that had a mother." He became a co-owner of Vegetarian Times in the mid-1980s and expressed his fondness for tofu burgers and beets in one of the issues. Rogers also signed a statement protesting the wearing of animal furs. Politically, Rogers was a registered Republican, but his wife Joanne noted that he voted independently, preferring not to discuss politics openly to maintain impartiality. A Presbyterian, Rogers integrated many Christian values into the messages of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, although he rarely overtly discussed his faith on air, believing that leading by example was more impactful than direct preaching. He viewed the space between the television viewer and the screen as holy ground and explored various faiths and cultures, including Catholic mysticism, Judaism, and Buddhism. The New York Times described Fred Rogers as a dedicated lap swimmer, and according to Tom Junod, author of the 1998 Esquire profile, Can You Say Hero? Nearly every morning of his life, Mr. Rogers has gone swimming. Rogers developed a love for swimming during his childhood at the family's vacation home in Latrobe, where they had a pool, as well as during winter trips to Florida. Maxwell King, in his biography, noted that both swimming and playing the piano were lifelong passions for Rogers, providing him with a sense of capability and control over his life's direction. Swimming in particular became integral to his strong self-discipline. Rogers maintained a daily swimming routine at the Pittsburgh Athletic Association, typically starting his mornings between 4:30 and 5:30 a.m. with prayer, Bible reading, and mental preparation for the day ahead. Throughout his life, Rogers maintained a consistent weight of 143 pounds, 65 kilograms, a number he saw as symbolic. I love you, with I being one letter, love 4 letters, and you 3 letters. According to Junod, Rogers considered this weight to be a fulfilled destiny. Rogers adhered to a disciplined routine that included daily naps, going to bed at 9:30 p.m., and ensuring uninterrupted sleep for 8 hours each night. He abstained from smoking and drinking throughout his life. The end of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. In 2000, after 33 years of hosting Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, with a hiatus between 1976 and 1979, Fred Rogers made the decision to retire. At 72 years old, he was gradually slowing down, having already reduced the number of episodes per year to around 15. The final taping of the show's more than 900 episodes took place in December 2000 and aired in August 2001. The Washington Post hailed it as one of the most poignant farewells in television history, noting the absence of publicity, media presence, or character summaries. Just Mr. Rogers bidding farewell, hanging up his iconic cardigan for the last time. A year later, on the first anniversary of the tragic 9/11 attacks in 2002, Fred Rogers briefly returned to television screens. In a heartfelt video clip aired on the public TV channel GBH, he didn't directly mention the attacks but spoke around them, expressing gratitude to viewers for helping children feel safe. I'm so grateful to you for helping the children in your life to know that you'll do everything that you can to keep them safe. Just 2 months after this message, Rogers received the devastating diagnosis of stomach cancer. Despite the diagnosis, he postponed surgery until after fulfilling his role as the Grand Marshal of the New Year's Day Rose Parade. Sadly, the surgery was unsuccessful, and surrounded by his beloved wife Joanne, Fred Rogers passed away at his home in Pittsburgh in February 2003. His legacy of kindness, compassion, and dedication to children continues to resonate deeply with audiences worldwide. The legacy of Mr. Rogers. In 2019, John Sinclair fondly recalled a moment when Fred Rogers had admired his cufflinks. Later, Sinclair gifted them to Rogers for his 50th wedding anniversary. Shortly before his passing, Rogers returned the cufflinks to Sinclair along with a note that read, "To John Sinclair, friend and cufflink collector, thank you for sharing these with me." Even in his final days, Rogers continued to hold a special place in the hearts of his friends and all across America. In 2004, the documentary Fred Rogers, Still America's Favorite Neighbor, aired to the delight of fans everywhere. Then, in 2018, the Postal Service honored Rogers with a commemorative stamp. More accolades followed. Also in 2019, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, starring Tom Hanks, premiered in theaters. Hanks reflected that watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood while preparing for the role made me reflect deeply on myself as a man and a father. Rolling Stone praised the film as open-hearted as Mr. Rogers, although reviewer Monica Castillo gave it 3.5 stars. It's comforting to think that everyone could feel as Fred Rogers did when he closed each show by saying, "There's no person in the whole world like you, and I like you just the way you are." As we reflect on Fred Rogers' enduring legacy, it's clear that his influence continues to resonate deeply. From his unwavering kindness to his dedication to children's education, Rogers left an indelible mark on generations. His story reminds us of the power of compassion and the impact one individual can have on countless lives. What's your favorite memory involving Mr. Rogers? Share with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content about Fred Rogers and his timeless message of love and acceptance.